Se7en is a crime thriller released in 1995, directed by David Fincher.
Detective Somerset is on the verge of retirement and is showing his replacement the ropes. They both become embroiled in a series of bizarre and brutal killings that appear to be linked to the work of a serial killer, using the 7 deadly sins as a sort of template. The two detectives have very different approaches to work and very different attitudes. They need to work together and find common ground in order to stop this murderous person.
Se7en, yes, a very famous film, this. So we should just say, before we start, if you're new to this channel, if you haven't been to the channel before, if you're expecting like a deep analytical dive of Se7en, that's not what you're going to get here. We don't do such things on this channel. It's more really, I mean, Simon, we have a reason for doing this film. Possibly, we both think it's like the first 18-rated film, or one of the first 18-rated films we saw in the cinema, because we were about 18 or 19 when this was released in this country back in the mid-90s. So it's kind of, it's one of those films that has a special place in our hearts. But you have another reason for covering it.
I went to see The Batman the other day. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is a lot like Se7en. It's well publicised that obviously they've based the Riddler slightly on the Zodiac Killer. Yeah, it definitely shares some aesthetics and stuff that is in Se7en. So, for example, I mean, I don't want to ruin the plot of either film, but there is a scene where they go to the Riddler's apartment, and it is very, very similar to when they go to John Doe's apartment in Se7en. He's got notebooks filled with all his thoughts and things like that. I was like, wow, that is leaning heavily into its influences. And that's not to take anything away from The Batman. I loved it. I thought it was a great film. I can't wait to watch it again. That's why I thought, it's time, I'd like to revisit Se7en. And also, it's not exactly an unknown film, but there must be people out there who haven't seen it or haven't heard of it, or maybe have heard of it, but haven't got around to watching it. So we thought we'd have a chat about it. And someone also suggested in the comments of another video a few weeks ago that we have a look at it. So I thought, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great film to look at. Yeah. Probably people have gone into, deep into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Analyse. It's one of those films that you can analyse because there's so much going on in the film, and its whole plot is so, so deep, and its use of kind of classical works and different relationships in there. I mean, it's kind of like a perfect film, I think. I mean, it's just a great film.
I don't want to overstate it, but it was one of those films that was like a life-changing experience for me, because I went to see it and I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. What have I just watched? And I had to go back and see it again. And it wasn't because I'm sort of obsessed with serial killers or anything like that.
No.
It was just, I hadn't seen anything like that before, and I was just mesmerised by the whole thing. The look of it, and the performances, and the music, and just the title sequence, and even the end credits are different to the norm. Everything about it was, for me, new and fresh and amazing. I was like, wow, this cinema is an amazing thing.
In those days, if you wanted to watch an 18-rated film, you had to go and, unless you were lucky, if you saw it on telly, it would have been cut.
Yep.
So that was out. If you wanted to see it, you had to go to the cinema, when you would have to, if you were underage, they'd ID you. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes you were lucky, sometimes you weren't. The other place would be renting them from the video shop. And they usually were quite strict as well if you looked underage. Maybe your parents were lucky. I remember getting my dad to buy me the VHS of Commando. I was about 9, I think. Nowadays, it's so easy to go and watch anything you want. There are much easier ways to go and source these things nowadays. And also, I think in those days, 18-rated films obviously still exist. Obviously, I'm going to look at them differently because of my age.
Yeah.
But in those days, it did feel like, because you didn't have the internet, you had this kind of, when you were young, everything was innocent. Not for everyone. This is my life I'm talking about here. You grew up, I loved movies, watched a lot of, the kind of classic movies we all grew up with in the 80s and the early 90s. But there was this kind of that seedy real world. You didn't really see it much. Obviously, yes, I know this is a film, it's not real life, but there was that kind of adult film which existed back in the 90s. You had your 18-rated films, which does exist now, but it's not quite in the same way, I don't think. And so seeing films for me, it was Se7en, Chopper was another one, these kind of adult films that you watched and you're like, wow, these are, wow. And also, you'd hear things in school. Kids would be like, oh, have you seen that film with the, have you seen the film with the girl that throws up like pea soup? Then that was The Exorcist. Of course, in that time it was banned, but someone had a copy. There was always someone.
Yeah, there's always someone
whose father may have gone over to Hong Kong and bought like a pirated copy of a film that was banned in this country. Because that's the other thing. A lot of films were banned in this country. It was a coming of age thing, really. It was like turning into an adult was watching like an adult film.
Now, 6 to 8 weeks later, it'll be streaming, or you can buy it on disc.
Yeah.
So there's no wait. You don't really have to wait very long.
No.
Back in the day, it was like, I don't know, half a year sometimes, or longer before you would see it on VHS.
Yeah.
So, if you really liked something, you couldn't even go on YouTube and watch, now you watch clips of things, either that the studio have put on or that somebody's filmed in the cinema. But there wasn't really anything to watch. You couldn't revisit anything. You could go back to the cinema while it was still showing, like I did.
Yeah.
But after that, that's it. You had the months long wait to see it again. So I bought the novelisation. And I bought a massive poster as well. I don't know what, I was obviously just obsessed with it, but like I say, a life-changing film for me.
And plus it was a good film. Yeah. I mean, there were many films that came out in the 90s. I'm 90s specifically because this is a 90s film. After this, obviously a lot of films came along that copied this, used this as a kind of as a starting point, and you get that kind of that same, the great intro sequence in this. Obviously there's a pre-credit sequence, but then you've got the famous credit sequence with the Nine Inch Nails music and the kind of the cut up.
I mean, even that, it's sort of foreshadowing things that you learn about later on in the film, and you don't really know that when you're first watching it. So
Exactly.
it even rewards repeat viewings.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when you watch it, I see, that's what I mean, obviously the ending, which we won't mention,
reveal
because if you haven't seen it, we don't want to spoil it. I think again that's something that it stays with you. Yeah, I mean, originally that was an earlier draft that had that ending, and the studio didn't like it, unsurprisingly. When they sent the script to Fincher, who didn't really want to make another film because he'd had such an awful experience with Alien 3.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
They accidentally sent him an earlier draft, which had the ending that we got, which then he said, I'm only going to make it with this ending, basically. I think to have another ending would just make it, would lessen the impact and would be more similar to everything else. So it definitely makes it stand out.
And again, I mean that's the thing, and a kind of the internet was around when it came out, but not like it is today. No. I mean, a film like this today wouldn't last 5 minutes without the end being spoiled like that. Yes. In those days, it was like one of. I mean, I wasn't in school at that point, but it was one of those films that friends of yours would say, "Oh, have you seen that film with the box with that ending?" And of course we had. I mean, people did send it up. I mean, this is not. We had the Adam and Joe show, and the Adam and Joe show used to do like toy versions of films. I think they did The English Patient and Toy Spotting, and they did Se7en, and they had these little toys, and it was hilarious. So you would see, maybe before you saw the film, you did see people like referencing it and things like that. So it was always that film with that ending.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I got to see it in the cinema, because it really was I mean, even though I mean, what makes a great film is if you know the ending, but it's still terrifying. I mean, the whole thing about this film, the whole film feels dangerous. You feel like those guys are in jeopardy the whole time, which makes it so exciting. I think what's really good about this film, it gets going so quickly. Right into it. There was a little pre-credit scene just to kind of set the two of them up. And then you have the credit sequence that we spoke about. And then you're straight into the first murder by John
Doesn't
Doe.
waste any time. But,
it doesn't waste...
Sorry, despite that, you still feel like the characters... quite well within the first 10 minutes, because we first meet Somerset, Morgan Freeman, and he's getting ready for work, and he's very precise, and all this stuff sort of laid out very neatly, and he's picking bits of lint off his jacket, so you kind of get a sense that he's a sort of organized person, meticulous kind of guy. And then he goes to a crime scene, and it's a husband and wife. The wife has killed the husband, and his only question is did their kids see it? And the other cop, well, we then learn that he's obviously retiring. He goes, we can't wait until we get rid of you, which seems a bit harsh. But and he hates the fact that he's asked that question. And it's like, that's, that he obviously is concerned for the kids' welfare and what effect that is going to have on him. Whereas the others, it's just a job. They're not really bothered. They're just there to pick up the pieces, basically, and write a report. So it gives you, that he's definitely set apart from the other detectives. And then we Mills, of course, who is quite cocky,
young,
a bit arrogant.
fresh-faced.
Yeah.
He's a bit naive. He's coming to the city. He was upstate before, but it was maybe a little less
violent. but yeah, I mean, we learn about the environment in which they live in as well, just with a few,
within seconds.
It's raining and it's oppressive and dark and dank and horrible, but also just with lines where Somerset questions as to why Mills wants to be there. He's asked to be transferred to this place. It's like, why on earth would you do that? And that, again, tells the audience that it's not a good place to be. Why would anyone want to come here by choice? So, 10 minutes in and we know
everything
we need to know. And then, even then, after we see Mills again, his morning routine, and he's messy, and he has his... I love the fact he's got his ties like knotted, and he just puts it over his head. That's a nice little touch. And there's a little moment where Tracy, played by his wife, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, calls him Serpico. And obviously, Serpico was a real cop who was portrayed by Al Pacino in the movie of the same name, who informed on other corrupt police officers within his precinct. So that gives... I don't know whether it's intentional, but...
No, it sets you up if you know that
maybe
film.
That's why he transferred, because he did something similar.
Yeah,
it's never mentioned again.
No.
It's never referenced, but it's just a little thing that gives you a hint as to why he transferred there.
Yeah, and I think there was so much going on in that opening in the first few minutes of the film, but it gives you everything you need to know to set you up for this film, which is, heavy going. I mean, what I really noticed this time is the sound of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the sound of it is just so... Train, that's...
Vibrating apartment.
This, the sound here is so... You literally hear everything, and it rarely stops, the sound. But it's kind of amped up, It's not like you just hear what's going... Like a lot of films, you hear what's going on in the background, and that's fine. But here, it's purposely there. It's there to kind of throw you off sense a little bit and make you feel a little bit uneasy. There's a scene where they go into a safe house and there's a cop sitting on the stairs who's guarding the safe house, and he's bouncing a ball on the wall. So you hear it goes ba-dum, ba-dum. And then when they're inside talking to the character they're inside talking to, you can still hear it in the background. Ba-dum, ba-dum. And it's there, it's just there, and it's a little off-putting, but it just throws you off centre slightly. And the whole film does this, whether you're in Somerset's apartment and you can hear sirens going past. But it's always there. And the sound design is just incredible to listen to.
Absolutely.
Really.
I mean, I think the only moment where there's any sort of calm is when he goes to the library.
Yeah, that's
and then
a
they
very
play some classical music.
A bit of bark in there.
Yeah.
And it's really... I mean, that sequence is great because obviously that's another scene that shows the difference between Mills and Somerset. Somerset is, at this point, he starts to research the first 2 murders have happened. Yeah, because that's the point that he realises what's possibly going on here, because he's seen the 2, gluttony and greed. I mean, Somerset is wise. He's been in the job for many, many years. He's tired, but he is the wise cop. And of course, he's able to go to the library, start researching all of this. And it's a wonderful moment where it kind of cuts between him and then Mills looking at all the kind of the quite violent evidence, crime scene photos, and but there is kind of a moment of quiet there, which you don't often get throughout the film. No. I think this time I kind of listened to it this time. You can watch it, but you should listen to it as well. And it's,
there's a score. I think it's Howard Shore.
Which
a lot, it is there a lot of the time, but sometimes it is quite low down in the mix. You can hear the music. They definitely choose the moments to sort of amp it up a bit. And obviously, like I said, the background noise is almost more important than the music sometimes.
At times it is. It's claustrophobic. Living in a city can be claustrophobic. It's just oppressive, it's repugnant, and no one likes each other. And
it's got an amazing jump scare.
And it has an amazing,
with
which John C. McGinley didn't apparently know about, did he?
Didn't he?
No, they kept that one quiet, and so it's a real shock to the system.
We won't say where, but just in case you haven't seen it, but it definitely made me jump the first time.
I did. It didn't make me jump this time watching it again because it's there. But I remember being like, this is such a creepy, strange moment. I'm sure there are a lot of people who watch our channel who do know this film because it's a classic, but it's definitely one worth revisiting. What I also find about it actually is it does a great job at feeling or not feeling dated, which I think is quite clever. Because I think, you know, films that maybe rely too heavily on things like product placement and cultural references of the day or the year they're filmed in, fucking hell.
It really did vibrate that time.
It did vibrate, yeah.
Is that a freight one, is it? Oh no.
That's a big freight train.
No, it's got windows, look.
Oh, that's good. Oh no, shit, that's the Flying Scotsman.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow, it really is flying.
Flying Scotsman's going through Kent today.
Oh, is it?
I just literally read about it before you came over.
Well, there we go.
That's what that was. So, like Se7en, I also have a vibrating apartment.
Yes.
Amazing. But I did know I was sitting next to her. They didn't come, like, you know, take me in 5-minute intervals, and the trains didn't come. Plus, I can actually see the line from my window.
You have to be pretty blind to miss that, yeah.
Amazing. The Flying Scotsman went past. What was
Exciting
I saying?
times.
I was talking about the fact that the film doesn't feel dated. I have to revisit Fight Club. I haven't seen that for a long time either.
I love that as well. And the game as well. I really like that.
I watched that recently. I forgot,
And Panic Room. I mean, I love all this. The only one I haven't seen is Mank. I haven't seen the latest one. But I feel like I should watch Citizen Kane before I watch it. I don't know why, but...
Have you not seen Citizen Kane?
I haven't, no, sorry.
I mean, I haven't seen The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
That's really good. I mean, it's a shame that he didn't do the whole trilogy, but no, that's really good. I mean, I haven't seen the originals, but no, I really enjoyed that.
I mean, he was on...
I forget that he did Gone Girl as well, of course. You know, that was great.
Yeah. I mean, he was on fire. I mean, in the 90s, he was that, you know, he was that kind of... Obviously, Tarantino was the other one, but, you know, Fincher really, you know... I mean, you know, a lot of people don't... I like Alien 3, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
film.
it. Yeah.
I mean,
he hates it. But,
he does, yeah.
But I don't mind. I think it's fine. I
think it's okay. If you don't know this film, I recommend definitely check it out. If you've seen the Batman and you've heard people have gone, oh, it's a little bit like Se7en. What's Se7en? It just looks great. It's got some great scenes. It's got some great acting.
It's streaming on Amazon in the UK, but obviously, you know, it's not a unknown film. So there's been loads of releases over the years. So you know, there's DVDs. I mean, I used to have a Region 1, I think, that was sort of styled like John Doe's notebooks. But I've since upgraded to the Blu-ray. I mean, I think ever since that special edition DVD, there's been loads of extras. So there's like 4 commentaries, and there's deleted scenes and an alternate ending, and there's a sort of in-depth look at the production design and about his notebooks and the photos, you know, the crime scene photos and the photos that he takes, the sloth crime scene. The guy's been there. Well, we ruin it. The guy's been there for a year on a bed, and John Doe's taking his picture I don't know if it's every day, but it's certainly every few days, and you see the progression of his sort of deterioration. They're only glimpsed very briefly within the actual film, but of course, you know, it still had to be created. And just, you know, when you go into John Doe's apartment, there's photos and all sorts of things all over the place. Again, on camera for very short periods of time, but again, somebody had to create those.
I mean, I think, and that's what, you know, the film, like I said, being meticulously crafted.
Yeah.
Not just the sound design, but the look of it, you know. I mean, it's everything. I mean, there's a shot right near the beginning of the film. I think it's the first one they go to together, the first crime scene. And it cuts to Morgan Freeman, Somerset, looking in the boot of his car, getting some gloves out of the boot of his car and maybe a flashlight. But it's just full up of there's boxes and files, and it's just meticulously crafted, this film, and everything has been thought of. A little, I suppose, like Kubrick, you know. I mean, they go into the notebooks, like you say, and, you know, they're all got and if you pause it, you can read it.
Yeah.
And it's like someone has sat there and written all that out. But
I mean, even if they've got nothing in them, they still have to be aged and things like that.
Yeah, so. And it looks that I mean, that scene they go into the apartment is so. It's so memorable, and there's this quite weird moment, actually. It's weird, you see the cross on the bed, and the camera moves past them quite quickly, which is strange, because they're moving through quite slowly, and then there's this one shot where the camera moves slightly quicker, and you get that quite horrible, I don't know, the bed, the single bed, and this large red cross, which is quite oppressive, There's so much to look at in this.
I mean, I think, you know, when talking about camera moves, you know, I think David Fincher is very much, always has a purpose of where the camera is and what its focus is, and, you know, where the character is in the frame, and it uses it to imply certain things. So, you know, when there is a scene, there's a couple of scenes with Somerset and Mills and Arlie Ermey's character, Captain somebody, and the shots, as the conversation progresses and the sort of the dynamics change between the characters, the shots used and the distance the camera is from the characters, all changes to imply different things. So, but I mean, there's other channels that do far better analysis of Fincher and his use of the camera than we can ever do. So go and search those out, because there's some really fascinating stuff about him and his films.
He's experienced about as much pain and suffering as anyone I've encountered, give or take, and he still has hell to look forward to. I love that. I just love the dialogue. Yeah. And again, I think it's just got... I love the dialogue, and I just,
And it's all delivered perfectly.
It's delivered perfectly, and it's just... There's so much to delve into in this film, and I think it's really good. And, I'm sure there are people out there that aren't so keen on it, and that's absolutely fine. Why?
I mean, probably because it makes them uncomfortable. Maybe.
Probably, yeah. They feel like slightly akin to John Doe.
Yeah.
And
because the subject matter isn't particularly nice, and it is an oppressive, dark, gloomy, gritty film. I mean, there are moments of levity in it, but not many.
So that was Se7en, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there, and don't forget to push that bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on social media, and join us again soon for another video.